This episode is brought to you by the European Coworking Assembly. We are everything Coworking Europe. If you head to the Coworking Assembly website, you can connect with our World Coworking, European Freelancers Week, Coworking Symposium, Coworking Library, and Coworking Tools.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another Co-working Values podcast. And my next guest needs no introduction. Ashley Proctor, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
Oh, I'm probably known for my work over the years through Creative Blueprint and Coworking Canada, and I think I would like to be known for just leaving things better than I found them.
Oh, that's lovely.
But I think the very first time we would have called it a collaborative space, not a co-working space.
I've never worked this question out yet, but there's something to do with all the stuff that happened in COVID and lockdown and George Floyd's murder and the world coming apart and going back together again and coming apart and going back together again. And people like you and me are always like ranting, maybe, or advocating is a better term for what I'm seeing about, connection and community and getting together in local areas. And do you feel like a lot of stuff happened faster than it would have done if we hadn't been through all that together? It feels like a lot of stuff we talked about 10 years ago got permission to happen in society.
Yeah, it reminds me sort of like tectonic plates moving over time. Like we feel the ground rumbling, and every once in a while there's a big shift. It was really just the pressure building up for quite a while. And yeah, I do feel there's been a lot of acceleration in terms of remote work and the way we're thinking about these social justice issues and the impacts that we're all facing because of the environment and these issues specifically around the world. It's becoming more commonplace, and we have direct experience now rather than just hearing about it or reading about it. So yeah, I think a lot of things have been accelerated. It's a very tumultuous time, obviously, that we're finding ourselves in. A lot of change. There's a lot of I hesitate to get into details because of the situations currently at play. There's a lot that is breaking our hearts in the news today. And it's a heavy place to be. But we have the privilege and the power of being in a place where we are either financially secure or we have a platform. We might have the privilege of being in a safe country, of living freely or having the freedom of speech. And so I think to advocate is one of the first small things we can do to help educate other people along the way. But I'd like to see all of us using our platforms and our privilege to ensure that these stories and these voices remain front and center. And, these shifts are really essential. We need things to shift to make progress. And so as painful as some of these shifts are, and that this transition might be, I'm really hoping that we're collectively working towards a more just future. And then in the end, we would all benefit from that.
I feel the same. Like to say, oh, it's a really exciting time is a bit, tone deaf. I can feel just from the people I directly talk to around me who are connected to all of the unrest in the world and, their different, political or religious dispositions. I'm trying to say that elegantly. So I feel that bit. And then I've got this massive hope that there was a comedian called Patrick something, and he closed what is, like in the States you have, like the Late Show and that kind of show in Ireland. And Patrick Katie, his father, was killed in the unrest in Ireland. And he just said this thing that like really got me. And he kind of had the position to be able to say this. He said, I went through all this with the English government, coming into Ireland and everything like this. And, he didn't actually say he lost his father on air, but he said, I've been through a lot of pain in my family. And, it will get better. And it's very hard to be able to say that when you're in the middle of it. And that was one of the best things I've seen. And I just think there's very few people that are in a position to be able to, like if we said that, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But I got a massive amount of hope from that. So, I got you on here to talk. I pulled you into the studio to talk about Coworking Canada. Before we came on, we were talking about a lot of things that, how co-working is way more than renting a desk. And, given what we just talked about is a very important connection point for people around the world. So what happened at Coworking Canada? Was it last week or the week before?
It was the week before. We had a group of folks join us in person for the first time since 2019 at Coworking Canada. This would be our 9th annual unconference. The last few years we've been online, just to keep things safe for all of our attendees and to ensure accessibility across Canada and around the world. I really love the idea of sharing these learnings out with a wider audience from Canada, like a gift from Canadian co-working leaders and also community members who have so much to share. We actually used to organize under the Juicy Canada name. We licensed that for 5 years, 2015 to 19. We went back to the Coworking Canada name over the pandemic. So it's this same organizer, myself as the executive producer. But we actually did that so that we could preserve our autonomy and our ability to run as a nonprofit and to co-create all of the content by Canadians for Canadians. What's
the advantage of? Because obviously there is an advantage, but what is the advantage for you of running as a non-profit, which is how we run the assembly in a Canadian, and what do you get to give people that you wouldn't be able to if you were a commercial organization?
Yeah, I think it just better reflects our intention as well. Like, we don't run these conferences to profit. That's not what we do. It doesn't make a living for myself or our staff or volunteers. The point really is to be able to share the practices that we're learning, to be able to foster more collaboration between these community catalysts. And as a nonprofit, it also allows us to focus on the experience and the people. So we are able to provide a scholarship fund thanks to our donors and partners and sponsors. And it also really makes sure that we're giving folks access online and in person, but also anyone who wanted to attend the in-person event or the retreat, for example, in Banff, was able to do so without charge because of that model. So we're still committed to that for the upcoming online version, or pay what you can tickets, thanks to those sponsors and partners. But this model really just is a way for us to make sure that we're living and breathing our values, which is, we're not profiting off of bringing co-working operators together. The purpose is to exchange knowledge and to be able to bring that back to our own respective communities.
So I've been researching a lot around UK co-working and London co-working and stuff like this. And in casting this DeskMag thing, I should have had it right in front of me. But the figure of like independently run co-working spaces was something like 70% of the thousands of co-working spaces in the UK are, not like mainstream brands and stuff like that. And I just thought, I was really inspired by that, actually. And how is it in Canada, and what happens when those people get together? Because there's one thing to come from, if I was a restaurant coming from, TGI Fridays or Pizza Hut, but, when Jake's coffee shop shows up, what happens in the room, and in your experience, what's possible for the local economy out of that?
I think the independent spaces have a lot to contribute because they're really genuinely committed to the human impact. It's their community, their neighborhood. Oftentimes it's a community of peers that are gathering in this space. They have common interests or values. But I think because of the uniqueness and the independent operation, we get the same kind of incredible variety that we do from like independent coffee shops. They're all different and unique, and you might want something different depending on the work you're doing or the day of the week or what kind of folks you want to surround yourself with. Whereas usually with a larger chain, and nothing against these chains, they all have different reasons for existing. And there are times when they make sense, even for the most independent supporter, to use a larger space. For example, if I'm at the airport or if I'm traveling in somewhere I'm unfamiliar with, I know what to expect. I'm going to get exactly the same McDonald's at anywhere I go. But I think that the independent spaces have so much to contribute because they're doing things that serve their unique community and well. And so some of these spaces might be focused very specifically on social innovation or inclusion. Other spaces might be really focused on acceleration and incubation. Other spaces might be really dedicated towards the arts or empowering artists and creative workers. And there are some that really balance all of that really well. But I think there's a lot to learn from those, as well as from non-coworking models. And so at Coworking Canada this year, in person and online, we're hearing from speakers that are running all kinds of spaces. And these wouldn't be traditional coworking spaces. One of our featured spaces on the tours and at the event was Calgary's new Central Library. And if you haven't researched Calgary Central Library, you really must. They have an entire programming centered around Indigenous placemaking at the library. They're connecting people to the place, the land, through different artwork by Indigenous artists with a connection to Treaty 7. There are also Indigenous language programs. There's a playground for children on the second floor so they can learn and play with movement. I can't even begin to get through the architecture. First of all, you walk into a building and feel something. That's a place to walk into and learn about feeling something, designed for public. But to also have things like an elders guidance circle, where you can meet with an Indigenous elder or sit down and book office hours to talk to an Indigenous elder. This is something that is really reimagining what it means to have public space and hold space for the public. So placemaking at a library. We talked to Dieter Schurig from C-Space, which is an incredible transformation project of an old school building into actually an entire block, into living space, workspace, gathering space, co-working space, presentation space, a black box theater, and what that's doing for the creative community in Calgary.
What about Alana?
Oh, we talked about a lot. We actually had a panel with a bunch of different rural co-working operators from across Turtle Island, so most people know it as North America. We had folks from small co-working communities who weren't in an urban core, and really talking about what these communities operate as. It's a bit differently than just a workspace. So in a lot of cases, they're providing multiple services. It might be a meeting point or a gathering point or training rooms, warehousing, a UPS pickup location, like mail service or package delivery. But the most important thing is they're operating as community hubs. That could be a community center. It might be a collaborative space or an event space for community groups, but it's also serving as like an information center in a small town, or the first point of contact with locals, which is a very exciting space to play. And I think we're going to see a lot of development in rural communities and what the impact and power of co-working could be in those communities in the coming year. So we spoke with some folks from Cochrane and from Canmore, Alberta, rural communities outside of Calgary where we were gathering, as well as just outside of Seattle and in California as well, Kernville. Lots of exciting stuff happening there.
And what about they more than one co-working space operator said they saw that and they wanted to do that wherever they turned up, so it's like this little beacon thing. I need to find a way to get Kasim and Startwell into this, because I really like that podcast he did with you. Was it a year ago now?
Yeah.
And I love this.
Kasim's going to be joining us for Coworking Canada online, not for the in-person version, but we'll hear from Kasim at the online event. And they do have a unique model. I really like how they've pivoted. They're not just treating co-working as desks and offices. They've got a lot of other complementary services and studios to really support an ecosystem in Toronto. And yeah, I really look forward to sharing more with him, as well as some of the other folks who sort of are really pushing the way we're thinking about co-working. We spoke with Sonam from 312 Main, the director of operations there, and we were talking about co-working space as a vehicle for empowering and enabling community-led initiatives, but also being a space for trauma-informed care and for grieving. Co-working as a vehicle to provide that kind of support is a really interesting perspective. And we talked about co-working alliances as circular societies. Shane Austin from the Okanagan Circular Society, also OK Collab, a longtime co-working operator, gave us an incredible workshop on how we might use co-working alliances as vehicles as well for the designing a future that we want to see and operating our organizations in a more like a sociocracy, and really thinking about our design and our impact, like more than just a business alliance or support group. And I really I love how our speakers have really embraced sort of the catalysts that were in attendance and really spoke from the heart about what it takes to be in this role. Jerome Morgan from the Social Innovation Hub, Innovate Calgary Social Innovation Hub, did a really incredible keynote asking us to think about what our superpower is. And it really set the tone for the day. And I thought about that throughout the rest of the speakers. And I thought almost every one of these people has an incredible and unique superpower. We're not all the same person talking about our co-working community and the desks that we decided on or the design of it. We're really got to meet a lot of incredible people who care about their community and are actually on the front line making a difference day after day. The stats from Jerome's presentation too are mind-blowing. What they've achieved through the Social Innovation Hub in only 9 months since opening is a goal we should all strive for.
Can you say a bit more about what he did? Because I've seen a couple of things he's done, and I am a little bit fanboyed in awe of like the way he pitches things, and the mix of everything that's going on there. So I open his keynote out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Jerome had a couple of different areas in his portfolio I think he's the associate director at Social Innovation Hub. But he's really focused on inclusion and really focused on inclusive innovation. So a lot of the events and programming that he's working on through the hub are like Black Tech Founders Pitch Competition or BIPOC Women's Showcase. He's got a newcomers pitch competition I planned for November, I believe. So really focusing all the tools and the infrastructure that we tend to see in a tech co-working ecosystem or in an accelerator incubation programming and applying it to work with Indigenous folks in innovation, Indigenous entrepreneurs, and really elevate BIPOC entrepreneurs, people who have incredible ideas and experiences, but just haven't historically been getting the attention or funding that they deserve. And a lot of this programming is connected to support and funding through the university, through all kinds of supportive programs and donors. It's an incredible investment opportunity as well. So I'm thrilled to hear more from him at the online event. The in person, it was just I had my mouth open the whole time. I can hardly remember the stats. I was just so impressed. To hear everything they're doing and through all the portfolios, but particularly the work Jerome's doing, which I think is such an essential part of all of our work. He really just focuses on that so much at the hub.
So where do we need to show up for the Co-working Canada online, and what do you need us to know, and who's supporting it? Yeah,
so the online event is an all-day event. It takes place on November 8th. It's from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific. So everyone check your time zone. Everything is listed on the website in Pacific time so that we can hit all of our North American friends. But we welcome folks from outside of Turtle Island as well. So I know we have a lot of folks in Europe, the UK, and around the world who really follow the work we're doing, and we encourage everyone to attend. Tickets are available now for the online. The ticket price is set, but there are also pay what you can tickets. And if price is something that is keeping you from participating, we really don't want that to be a factor. So please utilize the pay what you can or the scholarship tickets. We just really would love for you to be there. That's the most important thing. It's a participatory event as well. It'll be co-hosted by myself and Tony Bacigalupo, which is always a fun time if you've been to any of our past events.
God, Tony!
Yeah. It's a bit of a tradition for us to co-host the Unconference. We've been doing it for a decade. And it's participatory. It's not just a viewing party. We will be seeing the highlights of the in-person conference. We have recorded the keynote speakers, but we also have an opportunity for Q&A with some of those speakers who will be present to get to know the other people in the room from around the world and to engage through a few different panels, which will be live. So it won't just be viewing, although you're welcome to just have it on in the background if need be. I know we're all running companies, so we just love to see you there. And the scholarship program, I should mention, wouldn't really be possible without the support from all of our partners. And so they're not traditional sponsors. we really consider them to be scholarship partners because they're the reason that the scholarship program exists. So thanks to Cobot and Archie and AnCards, Sway and Newark Cities and DeskPass and This Week in Coworking, and especially to Nexus and to CoHIP. Both really made significant contributions to our scholarship program this year, and that allowed a lot of our attendees to be there in person, and it also allows us to provide those pay what you can or by donation tickets online. So huge thanks to them and for being so value aligned. These aren't just any sponsor. These folks really ask the right questions to be involved. I had a particularly, and actually, if you don't mind, I had a particularly interesting conversation. It was so heartwarming with Helga at AnCards when we reached out about sponsorship or partnership opportunities and what that might look like. We got enthusiastic response, but also we were held accountable from the very beginning, and that warmed my heart. You have no idea. The inclusion and diversity, the diversity and representation among our speakers might not always be visual, but it's absolutely essential to everything we do. And I think about it so much. I also think about the level of experience people have in the industry, rural versus urban experience, experience in different areas, not just co-working, different age groups. I mean, there are all kinds of ways we can think about diversity. And Helga asked me about it. Who are these people going to be? Who are we supporting? Is this a diverse and inclusive event? Will people be able to afford tickets? There were all kinds of questions. And I so appreciated that because from the beginning, I could tell that we were value aligned. And if it means that much to my sponsors and it means that much to me, then our attendees are going to experience that as well. They're going to feel it and they're going to benefit from it. So I just a heartfelt thanks to the folks who care enough to ask those questions. It means a lot.
Yeah, I love Helga. We work with her on the Co-working Visionaries part of this podcast, and she is total pro and keeps us on our toes. It's not just she does not just like send the check every month. It's like, where are we going to do this? We've managed to dig up some really, really interesting stories. Either before or after we publish this, we've got a podcast we did with Ilya from Creative States, which is 6 co-working sites that operate in Kiev in the Ukraine. And it was one of the most, stunning conversations I've ever had in my life about how to run a co-working space, co-working operation, and what it means to do that within a war zone. And I know that was quite something, and just she's phenomenal about the way she conducts herself when you work with her and how much content she puts out. So enough of fanning. Helga, thank you very much for your support. So we'll put links in the show notes to all of those things we talked about today. And where can we find you online, Ashley Proctor, and anything else you want to draw our attention to?
Yeah, so to find the tickets, go to coworkingcanada.com/unconference. The unconference event is separated out, so you can see the past event in Calgary, the retreat, and you can also see the upcoming unconference lineup for the online event. And if you want to find me, you can always find me over at creativeblueprint.ca.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. The longer we know each other, the better it gets. And I just really appreciate all the, particularly around inclusion, diversity, accessibility, and equity that bit you bring to the whole, I'm going to say global co-working community, actually, because I think that has a knock-on effect, and it certainly informs how we do things here in London. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to co-working, I forgot. Google European Co-working Assembly. That will take you to the website. This podcast is also on the London Co-working Assembly. And thank you to everyone around the world who makes things happen and helps build local communities. Say goodbye, Ashley.
Goodbye. Thanks for these conversations, Bernie.